We are led to believe that we live in an area, Seattle area, where if what is happening in Rafa were going on in the zone between Tacoma and Seattle, that we as a people would intervene and put a stop to it. And what happened in Maui with the fires, the inability to explain the conduct of the police, and what happened in Uvalde, the elementary school, lends credibility to the antithesis, antithetical idea, antithetical premise that is not true. That Israelis could get away with what they're doing in Rafah right here with our full awareness. Now, people like Bruce Harrell, Sharon Tamika Santos, Pramila Jayapal, not so much Jay Inslee, and Aaron Dixon, of course, more or less live under the reputation of the idea that, unlike the police in Maui and Uvalde, they would not be able to stand the humiliation of taking any kind of responsibility for something like that. And yet, they have used me as a flesh and blood burnt effigy for evidently JFK's philandering. Because running this cruel syndicate of engaging me in inescapable dialogue with the people who mutilated and tortured me for their entertainment is the only thing that stands between these people in Seattle and the humiliation of being held up to review for decades of hiding the cold blood of the AIDS attack, promoting David Jeffen, leading ultimately to Netanyahu's Hitlerian episodes in Gaza. And it's tied into the pornographic assembly of interrogation that focuses on the violation of my privacy as a lover. I gave my girlfriends goosebumps. And yet, like the Zionist lobby they represent, they smelled blood in the way I got rejected by their attack prostitutes. And they have engaged this scene in a blame game that alleges that their unprincipled partnership with the people who authored the text is in fact a search for the truth, when in reality it's a remorseless con shark legal upload from the dialogue machine of a huge pornographic corporation known as Neva. That's perfectly clear from the one surviving page of Gail Burston's text in which she mocks the idea that women are dehumanized by sexual partners who cast them off. Even though in the cases that many of these people were bringing to my attention, I was the rejected lover. They made me a joke of a rejected lover while doing this. That's called smelling blood, if anything is. So how did it operate? Well, they have some questions that they deem legitimate ones. Here was a story of sexual protest against the Vietnam War. So having been taken to that as a very young juvenile, around 10 years old, I knew what sexual protest was. And they had set up a con game saying, come sexually protest. And it was based on the dialectical Marxism of the tug of war between a food fight idea of a Hunger Game. And they brought in an attorney from Hare itself to prosecute me for violations of parochial monogamy, absolutism, and to threaten me with AIDS as a game, an human rat experiment to show how cruel the mind of Brian Eno is. What was I thinking when they introduced me to a girl who had needle tracks and a tattoo of the Grim Reaper on her thigh? Well, this is either sexual protest or it's brinkmanship by the people who released AIDS, was what I was thinking. And they had left a number of indications in what they called impingements on the persona's experience. Conversations about virginity, and working permits for young girls in the Pittsburgh Union sex scene. And these convo temptations were clearly a postdoctoral concept or theme park about metaphysics from the likes of Peter Sinfield and his fascination with Tamo de Jong, which is a symbol of archetypes of the human spirit and human soul. He collected what he called, the archetypes that we are closest to, like zodiac symbols. And even the idea of a human burnt offering for Kennedy is postdoctoral. I mean, you're talking about a battered child who was deaf and being told that everything will work out, just try to go along and get along. So what they had in mind was tipping me off slowly but surely. Now, what was I thinking, you ask? I thought, try to get them to make a mistake so I can get some evidence. And it turned out that it was brinkmanship. They were actually using my poetry to blow up symbols for entertainment of what they were calling the plague mass, so that the plague mass would be a dog barking but not biting. And they make this mockery through symbols, and the TikTok went out. And they had a fly trap set up with the help of Yoko Ono, who made the movie The Fly. And they got the women to say, oh, look, it's a human fly. Well, the media wanted to be in the driver's seat, and they were honoring the text of Gail Burson. Let's look at that a second. She says, I think I'll have a chook before I go to sleep. It was clear that she was talking about being tried as a war criminal. Now, the media backblade needs to be looked out for, because the media backblade is, for one thing, demonstrable. And for another thing, it is irreducible. The demonstrable fact is that they withheld any attempt to warn. They allowed it to spread with the concept that they could manage it through media psychology. And it is irreducible because they say that the real important person, John Lennon, was killed. That allows them to take the back blade, pass it over to this hand, put it behind their backs, and pass it back to the hand again. So the black blade is irreducible because they say that John Lennon represents the victims. And it was their idea as John Lennon's executors to also represent the people who did it. That's quite a backblade. It's irreducible. My work shows that the media needs to be addressed as having performed for us. Lennon was a performer, and his double fantasy was a stunt. He didn't really die that day. He simply went off the radar.